Hello and welcome, my name is Trismegistus, and today we're going to be reading through and translating the latest Factorio Friday Facts. Friday Facts 436, Lost in Translation. Posted by Harusa. Hello! We are all still diligently working away at the Space Age bug reports. Trouble with languages. While fixing an IME keyboard, Asian language bug, introduced by the 2.0 update, I got curious and started exploring localization for various languages. Even though my native language is Czech, meaning Harusa's native language, not mine, all of our development on the game happens in English, so I essentially never run the game in this mode. As I was twiddling away in the Czech crafting menu, it quickly came to light that the user experience wasn't as smooth as I would expect. Any capital, non-English letter would cause trouble. And you're going to have to bear with me. I'm going to mispronounce quite a lot of these things. I'll try and look them up and sort of how the pronunciation goes, but I'm afraid there's quite a lot of non-English words, and I'm not the best at languages. So yeah, you'll have to bear with me a little. Looking up Chirpadlo, which means pumps, yields Ropny Chirpadlo, which is pump jack, and Pobrezhny Chirpadlo, offshore pump, I think. I think that's roughly how they're pronounced anyway. But not Chirpadlo itself, which is pump, due to the capital ch not being matched to a lowercase ch. Hopefully that's how that one's pronounced. I'm going to have to, I will stop apologising for that, but just take it as read that I don't know how to pronounce these words. Players have already developed a habit of typing stuff like Padlo, in order to avoid the troublesome letters altogether. Non-English search finally supported. Obviously this has been a terrible user experience for years, and I took it upon myself to address it as quickly as possible. The root of the issue was that until now we searched by casting each code letter to lowercase via a standard function. So just to explain that a little bit, casting is basically when you translate, or change one thing into another essentially. So what they're basically saying is that in order to do the search algorithm, they basically change everything to lowercase. So even if it's a capital letter, maybe a good one is like an acronym or an initialism or something like that, where something like NATO or FBI or something like that. You translate it from say capital FBI to lowercase FBI, and the reason for doing that is it essentially simplifies your search because you're not having to look for all the special cases where there are uppercase letters and lowercase letters. If absolutely everything is at lowercase, then it makes all your search simpler. You're just searching for fewer characters, basically. And the root problem here, the issue, was that casting essentially failed. So the code letters means the letters that you're trying to recast, you're trying to take down into lowercase. They don't, it can't find them, essentially, is the problem. It doesn't know what that letter is, so it just doesn't even drop it down to a lowercase. So in other words, you're searching essentially like on a null character, so it's doing no search at all. However, internally, in the Unicode representation, any letter with accents or outside the Latin alphabet takes up multiple code letters and therefore wasn't recognised or converted at all. So Unicode, if you've never encountered Unicode before, it's basically a way of encoding every single type of character so that you have a sort of standard set and a more workable list of characters, particularly for when you're trying to do programming things. So that a very good example of, obviously the letters, all of the standard letters in the Latin alphabet, the A, B, C, D type characters have a particular, a code, and every other letter from every other language in theory should have a code, although this is part of the problem that some of them haven't been added, etc. But yes, you then get they're then grouped up, basically, is the idea. So you've got your letters, you've got your numbers, punctuation. A particularly good example of when you're trying to think about this is currency symbols. So everyone has this SC like prefix to it, and then the currency symbols themselves. So you've got pounds and dollars, and because one of the things you've got to remember, there are different types of dollars, so there's US dollars and Brunei dollars and Namibian dollars and New Zealand dollars, and so each of those gets its own symbol essentially, so that you can tell, you might have seen USD written on, when you see US dollars being talked about in the thing, and that's to identify it as being a US dollar, not a Fijian dollar. And so each of those requires a different character, so that, as you can see, they got this prefix here, BZ, BER, and that's essentially what you code into the Unicode, and it therefore tells everyone and that code, and it allows it to work and saying, right, this is the code that we're referring to. We are referring to Liberian dollars, and this is the code number for that character, and then everyone can just use the same thing, because one of the things you've got to always factor in, of course, is that people programming and different languages they're not necessarily in Latin either, Latin language. So you can't just use the same symbols because that symbol may not exist in your language. And so by having a standardized list with a standardized formatting, everyone can access that same list and talk about the same thing. And what it sounds like the problem was essentially with the tool they were using. I don't know if it was a standard tool. It sounded like it might have been something they've just dropped in. Maybe it's in a particular code library, for example. Is that because an accented character, so these in the Chapadlo, that ch has the accent over the top, a little sort of downward arrow. It wasn't recognizing it because it when that is done in these code letters, it's taking up more characters, and presumably it's only maybe looking at the first two characters or something in that coding, and so it's looking at that and going, okay, I don't know what that is, and just failing essentially. Furthermore, Unicode letters are quite a mess, since the table has grown gradually over the years. That's because they've added more and more languages, basically. So obviously when it started, it was probably like, the standard European languages and Russian and these types of languages that they kind of knew already. But as more languages have been added, as countries have been kind of brought into the, into the fold, as it were, of that Unicode system, then, the way it's written, I don't know if, there's some ancient and dead languages that have been, added on as well, for example. But obviously, as you add more things on, there's no necessarily like obvious sequence to that. They're just extra letters that language happens to use in a lot of cases. So for example, that the ch, accenting is that probably because Czech probably would have been an earlier addition than some other languages. It would probably be closer, but it's not necessarily going to be with all the C's type of thing, if you see what I mean. So if the basis language is a C with an accent, then all C's with accents you would hope to be grouped together. But just because then you can talk about a range of characters, and you can do easier things rather than having to search through the entire Unicode list every single time. So it sounds like that was where it's failing, basically. Many letters are scattered all over. Out-of-the-box solutions are usually bloated to accommodate edge cases for many scripts and languages we can't even render in Factorio, such as hieroglyphs, Sumerian cuneiform, or emojis. Yeah, so it sounds like tools that you could download, like pre-written scripts and that sort of thing, we're trying to account for all of those with like strange ways of doing things, or just to accommodate the fact that Unicode has become a bit unwieldy and all over the place. And some of the languages that it's accounting for that have been added to Unicode, presumably like hieroglyphs and Sumerian cuneiform, dead languages basically. It's like, well, why bother having them in? Because you're never going to translate Factorio into hieroglyphs, and even if you can, I very much doubt that the font they're using is able to even display them. So even if you came up with those as these are the hieroglyph characters to use for a pump, then I don't imagine it could display those hieroglyph characters. So it's all a bit irrelevant and a bit sort of, well, why bother accounting for all of that stuff, given they're never going to be able to show it on screen. My solution was to write my own custom mapping, focusing on languages we officially support. So we then see a couple of screen captures or 3 screen captures showing this in action. I've blown it up here so that you can get a bit of a better view of it. My giant head will be in the way, so I will shut myself off. So basically what Harissa has done is allowed a degree of kind of, because, this casting idea of casting all of the accented letters into their sort of Latin alphabet closest match, if you see what I mean. So here, for example, this Mnyanko, I say I really don't know a lot of these languages. I don't even know what these are. I don't know if this is all Czech or not. But the closest letter for that accented N is just lowercase Latin N. So it's basically taking that and saying, right, well, that N could match to a Latin N, but it could also match to the various variations with different accents that various languages might have. And because Russ has limited it to a relatively small range of languages, that can probably be a bit more efficient, essentially. And so, for example, here we've got, I don't know, gele, I would imagine that's pronounced something like that. And it's obviously then picking up what is a capitalized accented letter, Z. And then I think that's an umlaut over the O, so ul. And that would obviously be the search that's being done there. And it's finding the umlaut capital O of Ulvera Betung. I'm assuming that sounds German to me, but I don't know. It's all very embarrassing, this. I hate mangling other people's, native tongues. But yeah, so the basic point is that it's kind of it's now successfully casting. So if you put them in with the accents, if you put them into capitals or lowercase or anything like that, because it's able to cope with those now, it will then be able to match the searches, and that allows multilingual searching to work properly. So people don't have to bother with workarounds about omitting the the accented letters. They can just search for the full term or copy and paste it or what have you. And since I was already at it with a custom solution, it allowed me to further tailor search hits to how people type in everyday life. Accented letters are equivalent to non-accented ones. So Zelezny Plat becomes Železný Plat, and also equivalent in capital letters as well. Sorry, going to wimp out of that one. The two Japanese kana alphabets are now equivalent in search. Okay, so the weird thing with this is this is like a, what do you call it, like a phoneticization into Japanese in kana. And basically it is the word belt, but pronounced as if for the Japanese phonetic alphabet, which is kind of different to the phonetic alphabet for sort of Western languages. So I'm definitely not going to pronounce that one because it will come across as a little bit racist potentially. There's a quirk in Japanese, language essentially that they kind of don't work in consonants and vowels basically. So it's like the combination of the two. So they don't have E, as it were. They have be, de, se. So the phonetic sound basically is tied together. It's actually interesting. It's how I believe they teach children using that similar sort of phonetic system now in English schools now. Way off topic there, but basically, so these are. This bit's a bracket basically. So that just means a bracketed word, and then that literally is like a phoneticization into a Japanese phonetic alphabet of belt. And the basic point is that these are, one's a lowercase one and one's an uppercase one. So you will notice, some of the symbols are basically the same, I think. But that one there, for example, is the sort of sound, I believe. And you see it's capitalized and not capitalized, essentially. And that's those are now equivalent, essentially. The two lowercase sigmas in Greek both match the capital sigma. So this is capital sigma, and you've got the two variants of the lowercase sigma that Greek uses. And there we see these in action, basically. So you've got the kana search going on there. That looks like Greek to me. It's all Greek to me. And then you've obviously got the, so this Zelez being Cheles. The new localized search improvements will be released with the upcoming 2.0.16 experimental release. Here is where I would like to hear from you. If there is some other useful search feature that you find missing from a supported language, please let me know on the forums as a response to this article. I've tried to consult about these features with our translators ahead of time, but I can only reach so many native speakers myself. It is also possible that some visually similar accents got omitted by accident. And obviously a reminder, I do sometimes wonder, it should be blatantly obvious, I think. I'm not a Russer, it's written in first person, so and I'm reading it out. So it's not me saying that. Don't post comments on my video if you're seeing this. Go to the forums and post there, basically, as a feedback thing. Mod Portal Search. Besides the in-game search, our mod portal search has also been improved this week. In the past, it wouldn't always yield proper matches with Asian languages. We have updated our search provider to a newer version, and now it should be working better. So if you don't know, I mean, there was a Friday Facts about this not so long ago, but they updated the mod portal and the searching for the mod portal. So it sounds like they've improved the language matching, by just switching to a different search system, essentially. I haven't really explored mods, I'll be honest. I still haven't finished the expansion. My personal playthrough kind of got kiboshed in the same way that my Let's Play series did, and I ended up, I have been to a couple of the planets in that, but that's all really. I haven't really got, I've seen, quite a few people have completed it now, and the old star map thing is starting to fill out. But yeah, mine's not on there. I had a really good couple of sessions earlier this week, and so I've made a lot more progress. But yeah, it's difficult to fit in the time, I've forgotten how much time learning the game takes, as it were, because I'm so familiar with the base game that yeah, it's a bit of a strange. It's good. I like it, but it's very strange to be relearning the game again. Contribute to translations. With 2.0 and Space Age, we have added a lot of new items, descriptions, tips, and such to the game. Each of these need translating into foreign languages, and we rely on our community to contribute these for us. If you are interested in getting involved in the localization of the game, please join the effort over on our Crowd-In project. To those already helping out, thank you very much for all your help. We know there are quite a few crowd-in issues and base game locale problems being reported, and we hope to address all of them in time. So if you're not familiar with crowd-in, it's a way of kind of crowdsourcing translations. I'll be honest, I find this in some ways a little bit of a tricky thing to talk about, because obviously this is, people putting in like time and effort that, you could argue they should be paid for, because they are doing a job that someone could do, as a sort of a paid piece of work. But the sort of flip side to it is, it's a small indie type game, and I don't know that some of these languages is being translated to, what the player base is in them, because you're only going to pay for something where it, it's kind of worth doing, and so paying for a translator to translate it into some of these languages might be quite expensive, given, you may only sell, say, a couple of dozen copies, because Factorio is a niche indie game. We know it's sold really well as the expansion, etc., etc. So it's a big indie game, but it's not AAA super mega budget. And some of these languages, as I say, they probably don't have that many players actually playing them. I would expect if it wasn't here, if it wasn't being done this way, there would be no translation into these languages, is what I'm saying. So if this wasn't being done by passionate, people in the community, it's sort of a, I don't know, tricky thing really. But yeah, if you are interested in helping out your fellow engineers in your native tongue, then there is this option here, signing up to Crowd-In and helping. And as I say, they are calling for people to help them out with the translation. I believe these bars basically are sort of showing the progress essentially. So here, for example, there are 30,000 words left to translate, and 2 approvals have been completed, sort of thing. So, some of the languages are, not very well translated. So Basque, for example, So Basque, for example, here, you have quite a lot left to do, as it were. So, yeah. As always, type your thoughts in the usual places. Obviously, I don't really have anything to speculate as far as I'm aware. This would have been a classic one, I think, for sneaking in Easter eggs, when we were doing the actual, like the proper Friday Facts and back in the day. Making that sound like it was, months and months and months ago. But yeah, well, I suppose it was technically, wasn't it, when we started doing it? But yeah, so I think it would have been a classic one for sneaking a little, like the old Yamako fruits and all that sort of stuff, just sneaking them in without saying what they were and people translating it. But of course, we're a bit past that point. So yeah, I don't want to come across as negative on the translation thing. I think it is a good thing. But in terms of accessibility, it's awesome, isn't it? It's sort of adding in the ability for people to just read it in their native language is always going to be a great thing. And I say it's like, in a sense, it's like the power of the internet sort of thing. It's the power of collectivization. And And it's just amazing that people are willing to, contribute that time and effort, really. I should also, I don't want to apologise, because that doesn't feel like the right thing. But obviously the content on the channel has been quite quiet recently. I think I mentioned that I'm almost like recovering from the overload, in a sense of, I don't want to describe it as burnout, because it definitely wasn't that, but the overload of like trying to play the game all the time, with my October being insanely busy. And I know I keep prattling on about the same excuses, but yeah, I've not really done any particular content other than what you've seen, really. There's no secret stuff squirreled away. I'm going to try and work on that, and hopefully now that things calm down a bit for me in terms of work and other commitments, I can put those together. I have started putting together scripts of things I'd like to do. They're sort of falling into, I'd quite like to do sort of tips and tricks, just as something, because I've never really done that before. Try and do something super sharp and on point, and just smaller type things, and just experiment with that, really. But also then I'd quite like to dive in, and a few people have been suggesting it on our videos, of doing like lore and theory about the game. So, a great example that someone, for example, pointed out is Fulgora. Why are they not? Where are the aliens gone? What happened to them? Etc. type stuff. And in particular, from my point of view, why if they messed up Fulgora itself, why are they then not on Nalvis? There's no sign of them there. There's no sign of on Volcanus, and yet apparently, this is a planet in the same system, as it were, that supports life. So why aren't they there? Why aren't there ruins at the very least if they died out there as well? So all sorts of interesting questions that I'd love to dive in and talk about. But I think I need to script it all up and write it all out before I do that, because I think that's probably the content I enjoy doing the most, in a way, is the big scripted videos. But boy, does it take some time. So look for that sort of thing, probably, I would say, around Christmas. I'm not going to overpromise like I did on the Let's Play series, basically. I hope you enjoyed today's Friday Facts video and might consider coming back for another one. If you want to chat about the Friday Facts or Space Age, you can find me live streaming Factorio on my Twitch and YouTube at the weekends. Thanks for watching. Cheers. The two Japanese Kanna alphabets